All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Tennessee Brando Show. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your Friday evening to be with me. I'm super excited to be bringing you this episode because I have our next senator here in Tennessee. Miss Gloria Johnson is going to be on the show talking with me, and I can't wait for that conversation. I want to let you guys know real quick before we get rolling that I did release a new song today on Bandcamp. If you go to bandcamp.com, you can hear the latest song. And today is Bandcamp Friday, which means that all proceeds, the artist gets 100% of the proceeds. So it's a pretty cool thing. If you've never heard of Bandcamp, be sure to check it out. It's a great music app, and it's really good for underground artists. So be sure to check that out. And I tell you what, I'm really not going to do a long-winded introduction because I'm just super excited today to be talking with Gloria Johnson. So welcome to the show, Gloria.
Oh, and here he is. My cat decides to join us because I
Yeah.
am a childless cat lady.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't realize that. That's cool. It's really cool. Well, I saw you a few weeks ago. There was a Harrison Walls event in Knoxville, and I've talked to a lot of people about it because when you say there was a Harris Walls rally, people automatically thinks, "Oh, were they there?" And I'm like, "No, it was people though that showed up, to talk on behalf of Harrison Walls, which is I don't think something we see much in Trump's world. I don't know that people gather just to speak on his behalf." But it was a really cool event, and I just felt so much positive energy in the air that day. And it really feels to me like there's a growing movement here in Tennessee. And I think that, so many people, when they see Tennessee, they picture us as a blood red state. But I really feel like there's a movement. And you've been on the ground fighting against the fascism here in the States. So what can you tell us about that movement to give people here hope that we're eventually going to make it?
People are just so fired up. I mean, it really is true. I think was that like a week after the convention when
Yeah.
that I think it was a week after the convention. So people were excited anyway from the convention. But you're right. There were, I think, 1,600 people there that day.
Yeah.
And I know that people started setting up, like people had booths and that sort of thing, and they started setting up early. And the Knox County Democratic Party had 400 Harris Walls T-shirts to sell. They
Yeah.
were sold out by 6 o'clock when the thing started of
Wow.
all 400 T-shirts. That's how quickly they went. Every yard sign was gone and every T-shirt was gone. And the T-shirts were gone before the event even started. So
Yeah, well, I wondered why, because when I got there, I couldn't find any, and that's really cool to know. Though I saw so many signs,
yeah,
and like I said, I was just so amazed at the energy because we are in red Tennessee, and I'm here in East Tennessee, and it's very red where I'm sitting, and so to go to Knoxville and walk just round the corner on Market Square and see that, I was just taken back by it, and then I just met so many cool people, and it was positivity, which is something we just don't see much from Trump rallies. It just seems like so much doom and gloom around MAGA.
yeah.
But there was a sense of hope that I felt that I hadn't really felt that way in a long time, to be honest with you.
Yeah, there's joy, there's hope, there is kindness and empathy. I just feel, I mean, I always am so proud to be a Democrat because, I look at a Trump rally and the hate and the demeaning of so many different people and the vitriol. And then you come to a rally with Kamala Harris or with our Tennessee candidates, and it's all about what can we do to lift up hardworking families and the middle class.
Yeah,
That is what all of us are talking about. How do we make people's lives better? And not just certain people, but everyone. And
yeah,
so when I'm going into, we haven't finished the 95 county tour yet. I have one left.
awesome.
So we have done 94 of the 95 counties. And it has been such a great experience to hear people's story. A lot of this past week and since the convention has been Upper East Tennessee because we
Yeah,
started at places up there, but we're sort of circling back, and that's where we finish it out there. But I heard so many amazing stories from people who are, they love the town where they lived. I met a wonderful couple in Mountain City. They love Mountain City, grew up there, want to stay there. But the mother, there was a couple with 3 kids, and the mother hadn't been working because she can't find a job in her town that pays her enough so that she could afford childcare.
yeah,
And so She went back to school to get a degree, got a degree, but there were no jobs in her town, even with that degree. So what she's doing is she got a job in Boone, North Carolina. She drives 45 minutes to Boone to work. Her husband drives an hour to Virginia to work.
Yeah.
And so, and he's making literally a living wage. He's making a little over $20 an hour. So he, we have a $7.25 minimum wage in Tennessee. Virginia has a $12 minimum wage. And you see why people do that. And so in Kingsport that night, I met a woman who said she makes, for doing the same job in Upper East Tennessee that she does in Virginia, she makes $20,000 more in Virginia. So of course
Wow.
she crosses the line to go to work. And it just breaks my heart that we can't raise the wage. We can't provide these opportunities for Tennesseans to work in the towns that they love or in the areas that they love.
Yeah, that's very common around here, and where I grew up, just right over the border in Southeast Kentucky, that was something that was so common. Is there wasn't opportunities for people, and there so many people I know drives 45 minutes to an hour to work because they're just sometimes in the middle of nowhere, and they love their town, they don't want to leave. And I've heard so many people over the years, it's like, I love it here, I don't want to go, but they end up moving just to be closer to their work, and you can't blame them for that. But I would love to see, more opportunities for people here in Tennessee for sure.
Yeah, and we should have those opportunities. But what we see are the Republican supermajority in the state inviting business here, advertising, well, we have cheap labor.
Yeah,
That is not a way to sell Tennessee. We have a beautiful state with so much to offer, but our workers deserve to earn a living wage.
yeah, and it's so crazy to me that we're having this conversation in 2024 and minimum wage is still $7.25. It's like I know so many people that I was arguing with 15 or 20 years ago. Some of my Republican friends, and yes, I still have some, but I was arguing with them then about, hey, it needs to be higher back then. And here we are all the way in 2024 with prices as high as they are today, and they're still making the argument that it shouldn't budge and it should stay at $7.25. And I'm like, who can honestly survive on that these days?
I don't think a 17-year-old could survive on minimum
No.
wage. I mean, it's outrageous, and Marsha Blackburn is totally against raising the minimum wage.
Wow.
And this past year in the legislature, I brought a bill to raise it to $20. And the reason I did that was because the new MIT living wage study, it's great if you haven't ever seen it. You just Google MIT living wage. It tells you every county in the country how much you need to make to be a living wage. So of course I pulled up Tennessee and looked through all the counties, and it's anywhere from like 19 to 22, depending on what county you live in. So clearly the living wage for Tennessee is $20 an hour, or an average of $20 an hour. And, people were just like, oh, we can't do that. 20 is high, but at least we can start moving up. Maybe we could start at 13 or 14 and go up every year $1 or something like that, or go up incrementally with the cost of living. You can tie it to cost of living. And that's what I'd like to do, because so many states have raised the wage. They don't have a problem they don't lose jobs, and their economy does better. I keep trying, when I talk to people, I keep trying to tell them that the middle class and working families with more money in their pockets, 1 million people shopping at Target does way more for the economy than 100 people buying yachts. That doesn't
Exactly. Yes.
economy. So when middle class and working families have money in their pockets, that's when the economy is boosted.
Yeah, exactly. I've made that argument for years. If people, working people spend money. I mean, if people have money to spend, they're going to spend it. I may have this wrong, but I believe it was Dwight Eisenhower, who was a Republican, that used to talk about how that trickle down economics wouldn't work, and he taxed the rich a lot more than Republican presidents that came later, and built the interstate system across the country. And so, I think that. If people could just realize that working people are going to spend their money, and it's going to come back to the top. But if you sit back and wait for it to trickle down, so far we've not saw that work here in America at all.
And that's right. And they just the level at which the CEOs' salaries are growing in this country, while the discrepancy between the working class and those at the top gets wider and wider. We need to honor those people that help you get to the top. I don't have a problem with folks making money, but
Yeah.
make sure that you're paying the folks that get you there a living wage.
Yeah. And you're in the House at the moment, but you're running for Senate against Marsha Blackburn. What was it that made you decide to make that move, and why did you feel the need to go for the Senate?
Because I felt that Tennesseans deserve better. Tennesseans,
Absolutely.
they don't have a senator that's working for middle class families. We don't have a senator that is working for the hardworking Tennessee families. Tennessee families are out there busting their tails. Some of them working 2 and 3 jobs to keep the lights on and to keep groceries on the table. And our senators are giving tax cuts for the wealthiest and for corporations. That is not what Tennessee families need.
Yeah.
I live in a 2-bedroom cottage that I've lived in for 30 years. I don't live in a mansion. I've never been wealthy in my life. The most I've ever made a salary is $52,000 a year after teaching 27 years.
Yeah.
And I live like the average Tennessee family. And I think we need someone who understands what it is like to live like most of the people in your state. I feel like some of these politicians are so far out of touch with who most of us are and what most of our life. Most of us don't live in gated communities. And, most of us are struggling to make things work. And it's not because the prices are raised every year. I mean, that makes it tough. But if what's happening, the wage should go up every year as well. We have stagnating wages, and that's why people aren't able to afford things. And then we have a U.S. senator who votes against negotiating prescription drug prices, who votes against capping insulin in a state with one of the highest incidences of diabetes. That's just cruel. It's it's all the Republican policy in the state that is making it difficult for families to get by. It's the fact that the minimum wage is $7.25. We did not expand Medicaid, so people do not have access to affordable health care or affordable prescription drugs. And then our state and Marsha Blackburn wants to get rid of the Federal Department of Education, which funds free and reduced lunch, special education services, and under-resourced schools. They want to defund public education. And everybody needs a well-resourced classroom for their kids to go to school. And so all of this Republican policy is absolutely what is keeping people behind in Tennessee. But Republican politicians will tell you, well, the reason your family is struggling is because immigrants or because there's 2 women down the street who are married. That has absolutely nothing to do with it.
Exactly. And it's so disheartening to me to see people in our part of the world that gets duped by these politicians that don't care about them and doesn't live like they lived. And you're someone who understands what we go through here in Tennessee, and you've lived it, and we respect that. That's why we respect you so much. We realize you're one of us. And I tell people that all the time when people have said, what's it like to talk? I'm like, she's a down to earth Tennessean. It's someone that we can all relate to. And it's just so sad to me to see people get duped by these rich politicians. It's never like someone like Donald Trump has never walked a mile in any of our shoes. He's never had any dust on his hands, never had sweat on his brow. I did a video a couple of days ago and I said, this guy has never went over and mowed his neighbor's yard while the neighbor was having an operation. He's never gave someone a ride to work. Just basic things that we do every day that we don't even think about it. We just get up and do it. That guy's never done it. And yet people in this part of the world will look to him and think he's got all the answers. And really, it's so much fear mongering and, like you said, they're someone's coming across the border going to take your job, or the gay couple down the street's your problem, and they're not. And it's just, that's one of the reasons why I started doing the content I did, was to try to just get through to people that, hey, they don't have our best interest at heart. They're working against us. They're not for us at all.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. And just completely not understanding what it's like to have to work two jobs, to not be able to come home. And when I was teaching, I almost always had a second job. Most of the time it was tutoring, but I worked at a movie theater one time for extra work. But most of the time it was tutoring, but I almost always had two jobs while I was teaching.
Yeah.
And I remember that one of the resource officers in our school one time, I just thought he had this job at the school as being resource officer, getting there, 7:30 in the morning, maybe staying till 4 in the afternoon. Then he had to go to a second job. And he had just had this little kid, a little 2-year-old. And I'm thinking, how horrible that he doesn't get home. And he said that on a really good night, he could get home to put his child to bed, or to say goodnight. But often, most of the time, his child was already in bed by the time he got home from his two jobs.
Yeah.
And this is not how the wealthiest country in the world should allow its people to live, when it's policy choice that we can make to make a difference and make life better for everyone.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that, because my dad was a truck driver. He wasn't over the road, but he was here, at home, drove a coal truck and log truck most of my life. And, now that he's retired, he spends more time with my kids than he ever did me. And I'm glad about that. I'm happy about it. But no, back when I was growing up, I might catch a glimpse of him in the morning right before I went to school, and I might catch a glimpse of him right before I went to bed. And he was home every day, but he was at work every day, and I just remember those years growing up here, and there were so many, promises that got made over the years. We really thought that this part of the world was going to boom, and then it just seemed like that we ended up getting held back. And I think that's why I just get so annoyed watching people root for these politicians that don't care. I remember, back when Lamar Alexander did the walk across Tennessee in the flannel shirt years ago. I have an uncle, or he passed away back in 2020, but he was like one of the most hardcore Democrats ever. And he really, really had a big, profound influence on me. Because I remember, like, the first time as a kid, you hear Republicans talking about morals and values, and they're patriotic and they're for the military. And we all grew up in this part of the world with people in our family that are veterans, and we grow up to go into church every Sunday and things like that. So the way they present it to you, I could see where someone could get sucked into it. But lucky for me, I had an uncle that was like, wait a minute, let's go look at their voting record. Let's look at what they actually did. And he started pulling up their voting records. And then I was like, whoa. He's like, no, they don't, they haven't actually done these things for us. And that was very eye-opening for me. And ever since then, I just take offense at it. And that's why it's such a breath of fresh air to see someone like you running against Marsha Blackburn. We need you so bad, and we really hope to get you across that finish line.
I mean, and that's the thing, we've got to get this money out of politics, because I believe that any legislative body should look like the general public. It shouldn't be all wealthy white people, Yeah. I mean, if you, one thing that I think about this race sometimes, I think I would love to see someone win who wasn't a millionaire, who wasn't a wealthy person. And stays that way throughout the time, because I have no plans to ever buy any stocks while I'm serving. I just don't even. We shouldn't even give the appearance of corruption. The fact that people expect their politicians to lie today is really a problem for me. I think the expectation is that they should be more honest than the average citizen, because they're representing you.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point. And one thing that, we were talking about before we came on the air, and I tried to start us off on a positive note, but there's so much going on in the world. I knew we were eventually going to get to this subject. Right as I started to tune on, I was told that there's been another school shooting in Maryland. Apparently a kid shot another kid in the bathroom, but we just had one on Wednesday in Georgia. And, that's one of the things that kind of launched the Tennessee Three to fame was the shooting that happened at Covenant, and you guys really went to bat and stood up to the gun violence. And like we were talking before the show started, it's just such a depressing thing. And we, as a parent, I say every day when I drop my child off at school, I'm like, man, I'm worried, and it's so,
How can you not? I can't imagine not being worried about it.
yeah. And I know I really appreciate you for taking the good fight to them and standing up to that because, again, growing up here in Tennessee, we're raised up in the woods hunting, and we're taught that, one of my biggest pet peeves is this narrative that Democrats are coming for your guns,
They've been saying it for 30 years.
Exactly. They were saying that back when I was a kid, and it's never happened yet. And all we're asking for is some common sense. And why is that so hard to get through to people?
And that's what they really don't understand. I have a gun. I shoot regularly.
Yeah.
I knew I was going to have, well, I've had guns even before my father passed away, but I got my dad's service revolver. And so I took the gun course, the 8-hour gun course that you used to have to take for a carry permit. Unfortunately, they've gotten rid of any protections. You don't need a carry permit. You can just go and buy a gun at 18 and carry it wherever you want, whether you know what to do with it or not. Yeah. So I believe in having guns, but I also believe in safety precautions with those weapons, making sure that we have enhanced universal background checks, making sure that we have safe storage laws. So many kids, whether a teenager gets a gun because they've got something really, hurting people in mind, or a 3-year-old picks up a gun off a coffee table and shoots his playmate or a sibling. I mean, right now, I'm pretty sure that we in Tennessee, we all know that gun violence is the #1 killer of children in this country now. But in Tennessee, 36% more children die from gun violence than the national average.
Wow.
And that is because over the last 15 years, the Republicans have removed any protections we had in place.
And that's so disheartening to me. I own a gun too, and I shoot regular, but it's just it's so disheartening. I remember, I played a lot of bars here in this part of the world, and I remember as those laws started to get relaxed, I would hear people in my crowds going, "Oh, this is great," and I'm like, "No, it's not." And I think that there's this disconnect because people think that if you and I were Democrats, so that terrifies them, #1, and #2, they just automatically think that the minute we say that we want some common sense here, the minute we say that, we get labeled that we're coming after their Second Amendment rights. And it's one of the hardest humps to get over with people. And I always go back to the Second Amendment itself, and I point to the fact that it says a well-regulated militia. It's like, wait, I don't think the founding fathers really meant it to be the way it is today. Do you?
Okay, everybody can have a muzzleloader. I'm good with it.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And you guys really, you really had to go at it here in Tennessee back when that happened and you guys were expelled. There's a lot of people here on the channel that we've got people watching from all over the country. So to the people outside of this area, what was that like back in 23 when all that was going on?
It was horrifying to think that we were possibly going to lose our position just because we did what our district asked. We all represent 70,000 people. So they were trying to remove the voices of 210,000 people.
Yeah.
And that morning when we went to the well, that is where I was meeting people. I came about an hour and a half early because I knew there were going to be thousands there. And I wanted to meet people. And then a friend of mine was coming down, who's a local musician in Nashville, Margot Price. And she was bringing her mom, and I wanted to meet her mom. So, I went outside to meet her when she got there. And she was telling me, drop the kids off at school, tears in her eyes. I hope they're safe when I pick them up. And I heard that from so many moms that morning. So spending time talking to moms and talking to Covenant moms. And then we went up in the rotunda area just outside the house floor. We're talking with more families and standing with them. And there were some other musicians were there and they were leading songs. And it was just a great little fellowship and a community coming together because they were hurting. and there were students, and there were parents, and there were grandparents. And then because it was crowded, the highway patrol did sort of a rope line for the members to come through onto the floor. And my Republican colleagues all walked onto the floor without even making eye contact with a single one of those people out there that were begging for them to pay attention to this issue.
Yeah.
And we knew that we wanted to at some point say to them, we see you, we hear you, we are with you, we want to fight against gun violence, and we're going to do that. And so we didn't have welcoming and honoring that morning. We had a difficult time. Either they wouldn't call on us or they were cutting our mics. And we could not say that just to recognize those folks who were there. And so we decided at one point when we saw there was no way that they were going to let us recognize those people. So in between bills, we just walked to the well and started addressing the people through the mic. Within 12 seconds, they cut the mic, called a recess. But you can't hear in there with that amplification. And so we had a mini bullhorn that used to talk to the people and let them know that we were there and we cared and that we were with them.
Yeah. One thing I've pointed out to people here is, everyone's talking about Project 2025 now. For a long time, I think, people were kind of sleeping on it. We were talking about it and trying to point it out to people. And then when people started digging into it, Trump started trying to back up real quick and distance himself from it. It's like he tries to say he has nothing to do with it. But what I try to tell people is that, Project 2025 is pretty much already here in Tennessee. I mean, it's and if anyone's looking at us from another part of the world going, whoa, that if they're hearing your story and going, that's crazy. Well, that's exactly what the Trump administration would like for the entire country to look like. So I think that's why I tell people so much, you really need to pay attention to what's happened here in Tennessee, because that should be no pun intended, should be the red flag that everyone should be looking at.
Absolutely. And I always really love David Pepper from Ohio. And that's what he always says. Democracy doesn't die at the federal government. Democracy dies in the states.
Yeah.
And that's really what is happening in states. Tennessee is the tip of the spear for a lot of this horrible hate-driven legislation. And it's so frustrating to me because before I started politics, and say 15 years ago, I love this state because we are typically a loving community that wants to help their neighbor, regardless of how they worship or where, what color they are or who they love. And I'm like, when did all this hatred start? And it started with Republican politicians. They're looking for wedge issues. They want to other folks. They started with this divisive concepts. How in the world is it divisive to talk about racism? Excuse me, I think racism is divisive.
Exactly.
Talking about racism is how we solve the problem.
Yeah.
But saying that we can't talk about racism because that's divisive is pure ignorance.
It truly is. And they use the word woke as a way they turn that word into a bad word. And I even see people from time to time on the left who will jump onto this idea of let's attack woke. And one of the arguments I've made about that is that every time you do that, you just set us back, because if you have a generation that grows up and every time the subject of race comes up, someone says, well, now that's woke, don't talk about that, and they demonize it that way, then you're going to have a whole generation of kids grow up to not realize that it's there. I think there was a lot of work that was, put into trying to erase that hate and to try to move us forward. And I just feel like ever since Trump came down that escalator, we've been going in the opposite direction. And I really, a lot of people gets upset at me for aiming the blame at him, but he just empowered so many people to say the quiet parts out loud. Yeah. And we've definitely saw that here in Tennessee, just people getting more bold with what they want to, say what they want to say.
Yeah. He has invited these Nazis and white supremacists in. When he says there are good people on both sides, that is an invitation. I
Yeah.
don't know when this many groups like that have endorsed a candidate before.
Yeah.
And when the heck have we had 3 Nazi groups in 2 months marching in Nashville?
Yeah.
That's nuts. But of course they are, because the language from our governor is the
Mhm.
same. The language from the Republicans in our legislature. Um, a couple of the groups were again speaking out against immigrants. The language and the chants they were saying sounded just like the language we hear in the legislature.
Wow.
Absolutely. And so they feel like they have an open invitation to come to Nashville because of our governor and our supermajority.
Yeah, and when Trump said that line about there's good people on both sides, well, the argument I've always made is, in Charlottesville they had the Unite the Right, and Nazis showed up, so
Yeah.
Nazis felt as though they belonged with the right, and I've had friends that said things to me like, well, the Confederate flag, it's not hate to me, it's just our heritage, or it means Southern rock music, or whatever they say, and
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute. If you and I were at a rally, I promise you, if you and I went to a rally somewhere and all of a sudden 2 guys walks up beside us with a Nazi flag, we're going to turn around and go, wait a minute, you're in the wrong spot. And if our leader yelled out and looked down and said, hey, Brando, Gloria, there's good people on both sides, we'd be going, no, there's not. These people aren't good people. We don't want
Right.
to be associated with them. So I always point out, when you go to a rally and you've got Nazis show up and that's not a deal breaker for you, then you really need to take a long look in the mirror.
Exactly. Just like that rally not too long ago at the Tennessee Capitol against transgender children. I mean, that's what it was. And they make up this lie that they were doing surgeries to change sexes with people under 18. And it's absolutely not happening. They are liars. It
Yes.
was not happening in Tennessee, and they are lying. And then they stand up there with their lies, and then here come the Proud Boys, and they literally make space for them to come walk through the highway patrol and get a better place to stand. When you're welcoming in the Proud Boys, you should recognize you have a problem.
Absolutely. And I think that so many people they just get distracted by all the rhetoric from the right.
Yeah,
They get so distracted and caught up in that, and they demonize people. And I'm like, first of all, I don't understand how they could buy into that. But second of all, like I said earlier, if those are the kind of people that's showing up and you don't call that out, then to me you're guilty by association. That's how I see it.
absolutely. Absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, if you're not speaking out against those groups, then you're okay with it.
Yeah.
All that means.
And something you mentioned too there is there's so many just flat out lies that
Yeah.
Republicans tell, and one of them is they're aborting babies after birth. They've said that one, like you said also.
Blackburn said, I believed in aborting babies a minute after they're born.
Yeah, how insane is that they say that and people actually believes it?
I can't believe people. It's such a lie, and it's such misinformation, disinformation. No one decorates their nursery and then at 8 months decides to have an abortion.
Yeah,
This is not a thing that happens. If someone is not having their baby at 7, 8, 9 months, that's about a tragic medical issue.
yes,
That's what that is about. The Roe decision was until viability, but there was nothing after that, because after viability, becomes the issue is it's a doctor's decision because something has gone terribly wrong. It's not somebody just decided after carrying a fetus for 8 months that they don't want to deliver. That's not real.
yeah,
And we have to find a way to push back on that every single time. Because one thing I've discovered, I will push back on every lie they tell. Because
yeah,
if we don't, we get somebody like the orange one, and
yeah,
and we have got to push back on these just ridiculous lie, especially the one that fool told the other day when he said kids are going to school and coming back a couple of days later a different sex.
I
What
saw
kind
that.
of psycho moron are you?
Yeah.
I mean, this you think schools are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for
Yeah.
some surgery? Are you insane?
Exactly. We
Look,
can't even get free. We can't get free lunches in school, but we can get a sex change. That's like the craziest thing I've ever heard. And one thing, one of the arguments that I hear so many people make, they try to, when it comes to the subject of abortion now, one narrative the right's trying to come up with, they're saying, well, we just sent it back to the states. That's all we did. We just sent it back to
oh,
the states.
makes me angry.
Well, if this, okay, so if someone here in Tennessee needs reproductive care and they can't get it, and let's say they go out of state, they can be brought back here. Am I correct on that?
Well, not yet in Tennessee. There are states trying it. Tennessee did try it, but I think one of the reasons we need a U.S. senator that understands how life works is because at the federal level we can prevent some of those laws from happening. We
Yeah.
can make sure that there's interstate travel for anybody who wants to travel for whatever reason.
Because when you hear those arguments of, okay, this person, if they travel out of state, are going to be brought back home and punished for it, then it doesn't matter if it gets kicked back to the states. You know what I mean? I'll make the argument so much that it's still government, whether it's state
And
government or.
several of them, including Marsha Blackburn, are calling for a federal abortion ban. So are you really about it going back to the states, or are you trying to get rid of it?
Exactly. And
That's what it is. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth at this point.
yeah, I got to be honest with you. Back when I was in high school, I've always talked politics my whole life. Me and my uncles and grandpas, we always just talked it like sports. But what's funny is, like, back when I was in high school, I just always, in my early 20s going through there, I just always thought that abortion in my mind was like, this is a wedge issue that conservatives use to tug at the heartstrings of evangelicals. And I thought it was one of those things where they would always say they were going to get rid of it, but it would never actually happen. I was naive. I'll own it. I really was. I was thinking, that won't happen. And then we saw the Supreme Court get stacked, and then we saw it happen. And I just sat there for the longest time feeling so bad, because I was like, I sit there. I used to kind of blow that one off, like, it's just a wedge issue. They're just doing this to appease to the church people. And then it happened, and now here we are. And I saw a comment go by a minute ago on YouTube, but there was a study from, I think it was called the JAMA Institute, where they, since Roe versus Wade's been overturned, there's been 64,000 cases of rape pregnancies that have happened. And I mean, there are women out there and families that are just living in a nightmare now because of this. So what can we do here in Tennessee to start to try to turn this thing around?
We've got to elect different people, and we've got to get folks elected at the federal level too, so we can put in protections, whatever protections we can there, because we literally live in a state where we force a 10-year-old to carry their rapist baby. A violent rapist has more rights in Tennessee than a woman, because a violent rapist can choose the mother of his child, but a woman can't choose, or a woman or a child can't choose not to have their rapist baby.
Wow.
And so that is barbaric as far as I'm concerned. And it gets so much worse because of the fact 1/3 of Tennessee has no OBGYN. A third of this state has no OBGYN. More than a third of this state has no delivery room. And so we're talking about children. Children die at 2 times the rate of an adult woman in pregnancy. And in Tennessee, we have one of the highest maternal mortality rates.
Wow.
We're asking 10-year-olds to put their lives at risk, or for forcing 10-year-olds to put their lives at risk and carry a pregnancy. And so they could be so far away from help if they have a problem, because there's not an OBGYN in every county. There's not a delivery room or a hospital in a lot of areas. And so we are putting women and girls in Tennessee at risk. And then because of this, because of the Dobbs, since the Dobbs decision, we have 21% fewer OBGYNs coming to Tennessee to do their residency. All that means is that every year down the road, we're going to have fewer and fewer and fewer OBGYNs, because you can't come to Tennessee like you used to be able to do learn your full practice, and get certified as an OBGYN. You can no longer do it in Tennessee. You'll have to
Wow.
go out of state to somewhere because you have to be able to know how to perform abortions and DNCs and those things that are all necessary many times. And so instead of coming to Tennessee, residents are deciding to go to states where they can stay in one state and do everything. And what we know about residents is the vast majority of residents stay in the state where they do their residency.
Wow.
And so Tennessee is going to be in deep trouble in a few years.
And that should absolutely humble anyone. I'm looking at the comment section here, and so many people are just saying, "Wow," and they're in disbelief to hear that. I think, you know, I've always made the argument that a lot of times when it comes to the right, something has to happen to them before they realize that there's a problem. I've known so many people who it's had to happen to them before they seem to care, but it's going to start happening to them. And what are they going to do when it's their daughter, it's their wife, it's their girlfriend, it's their sister that needs that care and can't get it? It should literally, that what you just said should literally humble anybody, and it shouldn't really be about politics to me. It shouldn't be about Democrat versus Republican. It's not that at all to me.
Healthcare shouldn't be partisan.
Exactly.
Everybody wants their family to be healthy, but those who are wealthier don't have to worry about it. They can easily go to another state or get what they need. It's those who are struggling those who are struggling, even, it's even more damaging to them if they're not ready to have a family yet and that sort of thing. And this is why women should be able to decide when they want to start a family.
Yeah.
And, kids are getting out of college with $50,000 to $100,000 in debt. They're starting their careers. They're starting their family. You probably don't want to start having kids with $100,000 student loan debt for each of you. I mean, that's not something we need to be doing to our young people. And now they're coming for contraception and for IVF. They are coming for contraception. Marsha Blackburn questioned the Connecticut versus Griswold case, which gives the right to access to contraception. We know they're coming for it. Imagine if they take that away, what is going to happen to young people who are trying to get their feet under them before they start their family and all of that. It's just remarkable to me that not only are they taking away access to abortion care, which is health care, but they also want to take away access to contraception.
Yeah. When my kids was growing up, a lot of people may find this hard to believe considering what I do, but I didn't talk politics with my kids. It's just one of those things. I just let them, I didn't talk politics. I didn't talk religion because me and their mom separated and we had different views. And so I just let them find their way, and I didn't preach at them either way. When they come to dad's house, it was just fun time. But now my daughter had my grandson, and now she's starting to come around and talk to me about politics because she realizes what's going on. And we've had some really good long-winded conversations. And it's just so crazy to me that my daughter today in 2024 doesn't have the rights that my mother had when she had me. That's one of the things that I think about that so often. And I think about what would we do if suddenly she had a moment where she needed that care and couldn't get it. Mm-hmm. And I just think more people needs to stop and think about that. And something I point to a lot is I just wonder how many people might sit and, try to act like a macho MAGA person, but then they go in the voting booth and vote the other way. Because one thing I'll point to is Andy Beshear in Kentucky. It's a blood red state, but a Democrat managed to pull it off and stay in office there. And I just really believe that had to have been a whole lot of women show up, and it had to be a lot of guys that just kind of held their nose in silence and did it because they realized what was at stake. And do you think there could be a chance that we could see that more in Tennessee, that we might could see some people turn around?
And here's why. I remember, we started this 95 county tour. We're going all over. I was in Hardeman County out in West Tennessee, and it was a farmer I was talking with. And he was saying, in 2020, down the highway where my farm is, he said, every farm except mine had a Trump sign out there. He said, if you go down that highway right now, he said, there's not a Trump sign there.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I hadn't thought about that, but I'm not really seeing them. So
Yeah.
then I start, we start looking because it's like, they're not out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was in Hancock and Hawkins County the other day, and most of the way there and around there, no cell service. We were out of touch. But driving around these very rural counties, and we only came across 2 Trump signs. I know you don't see every one on the roads that you're on.
Yeah.
But it's a whole lot less. And even my mom's highway that we travel on to her house in 2020, I know exactly which houses had them up, which was a lot of them. And not only did they have them up in 2020, they kept them up till 2022.
Yeah.
And there's not one on that highway today.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've said the same thing. I'm here in Claiborne County, and back in 2016, we saw a bunch. 2020, they were still there. 20, like you said, but now they're starting to fade away. There's one about 20 minutes from me that I could think of. It's someone put out one of him standing up after his assassination attempt with the fight, font. But that's one, and we're talking about, like I said, I used to see them all the time. So I really think that people are just, whether they may admit it or not, I think a lot of people are getting tired of this rhetoric because, it doesn't ever go anywhere. When you have a guy telling people, hey, kill that border bill because I want to run on it, I need that as an issue, then that tells people he doesn't want to fix the problem. And so I just really feel like that more and more people are going to get tired of it. I heard Liz Cheney, when she came out to talk about, endorsing Kamala Harris, she said, women are so tired of this guy. They're just, and again, it's not 2016. I really feel like that when he gets on the debate stage with Kamala, it's not 2016. To anyone who, if he tries to use the locker room talk argument now, he can't, because now he's been found liable of sexual abuse. We saw him in action. We saw what he's done. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think it's 2016 anymore. Do you?
Oh no, absolutely not. I'm very confident of a Harris victory. I think we have to work hard.
Yeah.
And we are going to work hard, but I'm very confident that they're going to win this presidential election, because I'm just not seeing it. I'm not saying that Kamala Harris is going to win Tennessee. I don't think that's going to happen. But I think the numbers are going to be closer than they've ever been before.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason you see our Secretary of State setting up an argument for voter fraud. The Secretary of State sent 14,300 letters out to naturalized citizens, basically. Every single person that got one of those letters that called me was a naturalized citizen. And what the letter said, at the beginning of the letter, it said, you could be guilty of a felony if you vote. It was very intimidating. At the bottom of the letter, it said, if you're worried about this, here's how you can remove your name from the voter rolls.
Wow.
And so these people call me up and they're like, I'm a naturalized citizen. I registered to vote after I went through the ceremony. And then, we always hear Republicans say that, well, as long as you come in the country the right way, these are people who came in the country the right way. Yeah. But what they did, the sneaky thing that it appears like they did, is that they checked the citizenship against the DMV, against the driver's license database. That's the one database that does not get updated with naturalization ceremonies. So they knew they would come up with folks who had been immigrants and got their license, because you can get a license if you're following the path towards naturalization.
Yeah.
They didn't check with the counties. Our statute says they're supposed to send those names to the county and let the county find out. But they didn't do that. They didn't follow the statute. They sent the letters directly to these naturalized citizens in order to intimidate them. And I think, and we know already that at least 300 of those people removed their names from the rolls because that scared them, even though they are not in trouble at all. And even in Knoxville, at the polling sites, they had these yellow signs with black letters in English and in Spanish that said you could be committing a felony if you are an immigrant.
Wow.
And that is voter intimidation. But believe you me, I'll almost guarantee that when this election is over, if the numbers between Republicans and Democrats are tighter than they've ever been,
Yeah.
you're going to claim immigrants voted. And that's one of the reasons they sent that letter out, to set that scenario up.
That
And
makes perfect sense.
Disgusting and a lie, and they should not be able to get away with it.
That makes perfect sense. And, something you said earlier about, you feel confident in a Kamala victory. I do too, honestly, more so than I have in a long time. But how do we get people to realize that it's not just about the president, that they have to vote in everything? We got to get people like you in there. So how do we get that across to people?
Yeah, Kamala's got to have help. We've
Yeah.
got to hold the Senate, and we lost one mostly Democratic senator. And so we've got to flip a seat. We should flip a couple of seats. And so voting down ballot is critical. Another one of the big reasons I ran for the seat is because I want to flip down ballot state house and state Senate seats. And I knew to do that, we need somebody at the top of the ticket that is talking about democratic values, that is talking about making sure people earn a living wage, making sure people have access to affordable health care and affordable prescriptions and a good public school education and access to things like paid family leave and childcare infrastructure, increasing or doing the child tax credit, which lifted 50% of children out of poverty. Marsha Blackburn voted no on the child tax credit. How do you do that? She voted no on the Violence Against Women Act.
Wow.
I just don't understand how you can say you care about your state and not do anything to help them whatsoever. Except take millions from the NRA, from Big Pharma, and from Big Oil.
Yep. Before we did the live, I put out a post on YouTube and asked my members, a members only post here on YouTube, if they had any questions for you. And this question here that I wrote down goes along with what we're saying. Sherry wanted to know, are there any more candidates down ballot that we can also support to help the Tennessee Three have more Democratic supporters in their corner?
Yes. I mean, there are flippable seats all across this state. And I can promise you that all of our candidates are better than theirs.
Oh, yeah,
and all of our candidates care deeply about women having access and having control over their own bodies. All of our candidates want common sense gun reform, just the things that we can all agree on, like safe storage and universal background checks, and even red flag laws. People say, some of the hardcore folks will say, oh, red flag laws are unconstitutional. Well, that's weird because multiple states have had them for years, and we already have, with domestic violence, the ability to remove weapons. So it's not unconstitutional. It's absolutely legal. And if you do it right, if you do it in instances where there's no question that this person is a danger to themselves or others. I've heard arguments from folks, and they're not bad arguments, but they'll say, well, what if it's my neighbor down the street who's mad at me and he tries to get my guns taken? Well, no, you write the bill so that it has to be someone who knows you well, an immediate family member, or the police that have knowledge for some reason. And so if you make a good tight bill, you make it so you're just temporarily, it has to be less than a year, temporarily removing guns from someone who might be in a temporary crisis and are feeling, one thing that we know for a fact red laws have done is limited suicides, cut suicides by 20+%. Because when someone's dealing with depression, one day you may really feel super down and you want to end your life. If a gun is handy, you will do it. But if you have to wait or you don't have a gun, access to a gun, it's not going to happen, because probably the next day you're going to feel a little bit different. And so it's protection to keep people safe.
Yeah, and one thing I'm still learning about the situation down in Georgia, but apparently, that was a kid that everyone knew was disturbed, and the father knew it and bought him the weapon for Christmas. And that is one argument I've heard from people. They will automatically say, "Well, if we put that in place, then that means my brother could just have a beef with me and decide to, And I don't think that would happen. I think people. I just think.
The way my bill's written that I've run multiple years is it has to be a close family member. And then if they do it out of meanness, then they can be held liable for that.
Yes.
And it has to be a close family member, and you have to go before a judge and you have to prove it.
Yeah.
And so, you put in those steps to protect the individual, but you're also protecting the individual when you're removing those guns until the crisis is over, they've dealt with whatever they need to deal with and that sort of thing. Because the only other option is, having someone adjudicated unfit, they lose those guns forever.
Yeah.
But this is just a year. And if they can come back and say, look, I'm getting therapy, I'm taking medicine, my doctor says I'm great, then they can get them back early.
Yeah. Yeah, there's I think we got a lot of work to do here in Tennessee, and we got to keep people fired up and ready to vote. I really appreciate you coming on the show. I'm going to let if anyone out there has a question for Gloria before we go, send them my way and we'll get them up there. But I just think that, if we could all pull together and work together and realize that we're all in this together, it's that, and I don't want to, I know that my content a lot of times comes off like I'm being combative, but in my mind, I'm being combative with the fascism and with the extremism that's here. And what we want to say to people is, we're fellow Tennesseans. We all want to be in this together, and we want a place where our kids can go to school and feel safe. A lot of people that's watching this may not know that you were a school teacher for many years. And one question I had was active shooter drills a thing when you were still teaching, or when did that come along for you?
I never was participated in an active shooter drill, but I was teaching in Central High School in Knoxville in 2008 when we had a school shooting, and we lost one of our special ed students, Ryan McDonald.
Wow.
It was so traumatizing. If you have seen that, if you have been in a building when I'm down in my classroom, it happened in the morning before the first bell. I'm getting my classroom ready. My kids are all in the cafeteria. That's where everybody gathers in the morning. And I hear noises, and I look outside, and kids, just tons of kids running down the hill screaming and crying. And I'm like, what is going on? And tons of kids come in my room, not just my students, but students from all over. And I'm trying to get them to even be able to calm down for a minute to tell me what happened. And then you just kind of huddle in my room until we get an all clear that the student had been arrested.
Wow.
And I mean, I was probably dealt with that day in shock, because all we were trying to do was get our kids home. Parents come and get them, whatever, just let's, let everybody get home. And so my duty that day was to stand up at the circle where the pickup was and just meet parents and get the kids in the car and talk to the parents. And it was just the trauma on the kids' faces, on the parents' faces, on the teachers' faces. I just came home that night and just sort of collapsed. You had to do your job. You had to get those kids through that day. Yeah. And it's just something that no one should ever, ever have to deal with. And the fact that we are seeing it all the time and doing nothing makes me sick to my stomach, because no other country lives this way. We do not have to live this way. It is a policy choice.
Yeah. And, I remember back when Tim Burchett made the comment of, we can't fix it. And we hear that stuff so much. J.D. Vance said it's just a fact of life we got to live with. But Kamala Harris said it don't have to be this way. And I just feel like that's the difference between the two sides. You've got some people just blowing it off like, well, my daddy told me that I just can't stand to hear his voice. Well, but, it's like.
These are the folks that say government can't fix things, and then they run to prove it.
Exactly.
We want to get things done.
Yeah, exactly. And we have got the comment pinned here. We've had a lot of people asking where they can donate to your campaign. So we do have your website here pinned in the comment section. But Jess, our moderator, can share it again. We've had a lot of people that have been saying they're really hoping to see you dethrone Marsha. We need you so bad. We really do. And I truly appreciate you taking time out of your day to come and
Thank
talk with
you.
us. And it's always a pleasure to talk with you. It's been a great show. And yeah, Jess just shared the link there. It is Support Gloria. And so you guys be sure to do that, because we need all the voices we can here in Tennessee. And like I've tried to tell people before, you just gotta vote all the way down the ballot. I've never understood the people. I've never, especially now, maybe 20 years ago, I don't know, but you might make that argument. But today, the idea that you could say, well, I'm going to go ahead and vote for Kamala, but I believe I'll vote for Marsha Blackburn. I can't imagine that those
Yeah.
two things don't go together anymore. They just don't.
Yeah, no, not when this is just so critical of making sure, they say that we're so radical. We just want people to have health care and a good wage and get their kids educated. Those are things that we all want.
It's so crazy to me. For years, I would have arguments with people on the right, and they would tell us that healthcare would lead to socialism, or and all these things would lead to communism. And yet, then Trump stands up and says, "I'll be a dictator on day one," and it goes over their head. So we'll just keep doing the good work. But I truly appreciate you and your voice, and I just wish you the very best. And come back anytime and talk more to me.
Well, thanks so much. I appreciate you having me on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
All righty. Bye-bye.
All right, folks. It's always a great conversation with Gloria. I really feel like that was I'll just go ahead and toot my horn. I feel like that was one of the best episodes we've had in a while. It was really good. That's the kind of person we need here in Tennessee. That's the kind of voice that we need, and we have to do the work. We have to put the work in. We can't take our eye off the ball. I say that all the time. So the links in the comments. Be sure to go check out Gloria and donate to her. Support Tennessee and the Tennessee Three. There's so many good voices out there. And before we go, I do want to let you guys know that today is Bandcamp Friday. I released the song Shady Vance and Von Schitzenpants, which was inspired by Michael Cohen's nickname for Trump. We had a great time recording that. I will be back tomorrow evening with Sunday Evening Sounds. No, wait, tomorrow's Saturday. My bad. So Sunday, I will be back with Sunday Evening Sounds. That'll be at 7. That's members only. So for those of you that got gifted a membership tonight, and thanks so much to the ones that gifted those memberships. For those of you that are now new members, you can join me at 7 p.m. Here on Sunday. We have a Sunday Evening Sound show, which is just me sitting here playing my guitar and playing you songs that I wrote. And we started working on a new album kind of by accident, really. Well, I'm always writing the political satirical tunes. And so I've dug back into my catalog, because along the way I've been writing other songs that I feel like needs to be recorded. So we've been in the studio working up some new music, and I'll be playing some of those songs for you on the Sunday Evening Sounds show. So thank you, Tracelyn, for gifting that membership. And I saw some more people gifted them earlier. So if you were one of the people that received a new membership, you can be here on Sunday evening at 7, and we'll have a good time with that. And if you get a chance, go over and check out the song, and I'll have more songs coming your way. But again, I want to thank Gloria Johnson for coming on the show. I'm working right now at getting some more guests scheduled, and so I'll let you guys know as we go. So I truly appreciate all of you for being here, and we'll see you again next week. I probably will have a guest. I'm just not sure exactly who it's going to be, because I'm talking to several people and we're trying to get the schedules to line up. So as soon as I can spill the beans, I will announce it here on YouTube and social media. So again, thank you guys so much for following me, subscribing. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button. So many people, what's funny is so many people watch me every single day, and sometimes they'll say to me, "What's the subscribe button?" So just be sure to hit it if you get a chance. And I truly appreciate you guys so much for being here. And once again, thanks to Gloria Johnson. You guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you Sunday evening, and we'll sit back and play some music. So you guys take care.